Greetings. In my most recent video, I discussed the New York State Supreme Court building, which you see here, which is a building on Center Street in Lower Manhattan. And in this video, I'd like to discuss another building, which is even lower in Manhattan, further south in Manhattan, about a mile south, so about a 20-minute walk away. And that's the U.S. Customs House on Bowling Green, which you see here. It's also called the Alexander Hamilton Building. And here's a clearer image of the building. I wanted to discuss this building because it likewise has a number of interesting works of art. So in this video, we'll be looking at some of the statues which are outside the front of the building. Note first the four large statues on the ground. And to get a sense of just how large these statues are, compare them to the people, if you can see the people that are walking nearby. Now, each statue depicts a woman serving as the personification of one of four continents, those being from left to right, Asia, America, or you could say the Americas. I realize that's more than one continent, but whatever the case, America, Europe, and Africa. And these statues are significantly larger than life size, as I just noted. And all four of them were made by an artist or a sculptor named Daniel Chester French. Later on, we will look at a few of the smaller statues that are above the columns near the top of the building, which were made by other artists. So let's begin with the first statue on the ground on the left side of the image on your screen, which depicts the personification of Asia. There is a statue of the Buddha on her lap, and you might notice there's a Christian cross behind her. Now, I'm not sure how to interpret that. Perhaps it depicts Asia as turning towards other religions away from Christianity, or maybe it depicts Christianity on the rise in the mind of the artist. I have no idea. I'm not sure. So, as I said, interpret that as you will. Aside from that, to her right is a lion, and she has skulls under her feet. And perhaps relevant to the skulls, to her left are men who seem to be in various stages of submission and perhaps even bondage. Honestly, I realize this is impolite, but I suspect that the artists intended to depict Asia as a place in which much suffering and oppression took place. Then, moving to the second statue, we have the depiction of the Americas. Unlike the other three statues, it seems as if she is about to get up from her seat. She's depicted as if she's the most vibrant, the most active, and perhaps the significance or the idea being conveyed is that she, unlike the other continents, is ready to lead. You may notice there's a man wearing a Native American headdress behind her, and in addition to that, there's a work of Aztec art under her foot, and there are Mayan glyphs carved into her throne. Perhaps it should be noted that these statues were made at the start of the 1900s, as this sort of uncharitable triumphalism over previously dominant cultures in the Americas may be a product of that time, reflecting the mindset of people who were just coming out of the 19th century. Whatever the case, moving on from that, the third statue depicts Europe as regal, as if to signify monarchy, but she's nonetheless, as I alluded to earlier, not as energetic as America. There's a globe on her left, and behind that sphere is a man in a cloak looking at a skull wearing a Roman laurel wreath. Perhaps this is depicting Europe contemplating past glories, long gone past glories. And then the fourth statue is the depiction of Africa. Her chest is exposed, and over the years I've discussed this with a few different people, and I've come across different interpretations of what that might mean. I saw one person online argue that it's an allusion to the heat in much of the continent, but someone else told me that it's intended to convey an idea of being free yet primitive. And again, I realize these aren't exactly polite or charitable concepts, but nonetheless, these are the possible intentions of the author. Whatever the case, if America is depicted as the most energetic of the four, Africa is depicted as the most exhausted. There's a depiction of a pharaoh, a statue of a pharaoh, or perhaps an allusion to the Sphinx. But either way, it's worn and damaged, and it should be noted that the author himself made that depiction that way, as if to depict a once glorious past, which has now been reduced to ruins. So moving on from that, we can move up to the statues atop the columns, at the top of the building. And starting at the far left, there are the personifications of Greece and Rome, which were made by Francis Edwin Elwell. Perhaps relevant to the depiction of the bare-chested Africa, the chest of the personification of Greece, while not necessarily bare, might nonetheless be described as nearly exposed. Rome, on the other hand, is depicted as strong and conquering others. Towards the center are the depictions of Venice and Spain, which were made by Mary Lawrence Tonetti and Francois Tonetti. I honestly am unsure how to interpret the myriad details in these two depictions, but they are striking and thought-provoking, aren't they? Now, I won't be looking at all the statues atop the columns, at least not in this video, but I will share that the statue I find to be the most interesting is the depiction of Phoenicia, which was made by Friedrich Ruckstuhl. There are many details which are intriguing, from the headdress to the boat she's holding, but for me, the most interesting detail is the writing, which goes horizontally down the center of her garment. Now, they may be a bit more ornate and thus a bit different from what, many are used to, but those are nonetheless characters from the Phoenician script. The characters seem to be Beit Tau, Kaf Nun, Ain Nun. If we were to put them together, they would seem to spell Beth Canaan, or daughter of Canaan. An alternative reading could be Beit Canaan, house of Canaan, though with the understanding that the yod in the word for house, Beit, is a mater lectionis, which was omitted by these particular Phoenicians, right? Nonetheless, on a side note about the artist who made this particularly interesting statue, and again, that's Friedrich Ruckstuhl. He also made the incredible larger-than-life statues of Wisdom and Force, which are outside of a different building, that being the New York State Appellate Court on 25th Street and Madison Avenue. Again, this is in Manhattan, but it's a few miles north. Ruckstuhl also made the statue of Solon, which is in the Library of Congress. And you can't see it here, I guess, but he's holding up a document that says oi nomoi, the laws, and that's relevant to my previous video on the history of the law. And with that, I'll close here. Now, with apologies, I'll confess that I realized that this video only scratched the surface of this topic. I realize there is so much more that could be said about the many details of the different works of art surrounding this building, but I just wanted to sort of take a preliminary look at the subject. Maybe when I get better equipment and better images and a more detailed knowledge of the subject, I'll visit the subject again. Nonetheless, for now, I'll say that I hope that you found this as interesting as I do. As always, I look forward to the comments of others. God bless.